Okay.
Okay.
All right, we're ready to go.
Yeah, why don't we go ahead and get started?
Awesome. Well, welcome everyone to Co-Development, the secret sauce to a successful client-agency relationship. My name is Christina Zivich. I'm a Senior Director of Business Development here at FFW. I've been working in Drupal for about 9 years now, which is super exciting. FFW is a digital experience agency that helps clients like Panasonic and Newell Brands successfully navigate their digital transformations. I'm proud to say that I contributed to the strategic planning for the initiative we're going to talk about today, and I'm really looking forward to a rousing discussion with this group here. Today, we're going to explore how Newell Brands and FFW formed a cohesive development team to build a Drupal platform, roll out 23 sites in 11 months. We're going to keep it pretty conversational, so if you have a question, please send it over with the Q in front of your question in the chat. And Kayla, wave hi, Kayla. Thanks for your help. We'll take questions at the end of the session. Also, fun fact, to maximize or minimize the slide, just click on them twice. Steve, could you kick us off with introductions and also share an overview of Newell Brands? Thanks.
Absolutely. Hi, so I'm Steve Nathanson. I've been working with Drupal also for a very long time, since Drupal 6, actually slightly earlier, but in any case, I work at Newell Brands. I lead the CMS development team. And Newell Brands, we're a global consumer goods company that has over 150 well-known brands that are in households everywhere. Sharpie, Papermate, Prismacolor, Elmer's, Rubbermaid, Yankee Candle, just name a few. I'm sure everyone probably has some form of one of our products in their houses. And as I said, Newell has been around for over 100 years. It's a company that has grown through acquisition, most recently through Jordan's back in 2016. And pre-COVID, we were all based in Hoboken. It's our headquarters have recently moved to Atlanta, but we're hoping at some point we'll be back in the offices. But as I said, Newell Brands really is at the forefront of consumer packaged goods and really kind of delivering experiences to consumers and making sure they're connected with them. So I can get back and tell you a little bit more about you want to know a little bit more about the project as well. So I can give you some context on it. So about 3 years ago, Newell's leadership decided we have a lot of different data silos and different technology stacks. We want to consolidate all of that and make it so that we can really efficiently and quickly change as we need to meet the needs of the market. And so we set out on basically a digital transformation journey and building a best-in-class product. And so we built a platform with Drupal as kind of the centerpiece of it, being the CMS. And we also connect to other systems with that platform, including Salesforce Commerce Cloud. We have a digital asset management system as well. So a lot of different pieces to the platform, but FFW was heavily involved and brought on as our implementation partner to really help us with the rollout and with the build on that.
Thanks for the overview, Steve. Lindsay?
Sure.
I'm Lindsay Catlett. I've been working with Drupal for about 12 years now. I'm the architect on the CMS team, on Steve's team at Newell. I've been here for about a year. And my role in the project is kind of interesting because I came on as architect as the project was kind of midway through. So I was kind of a co-architect with Alexi after the project was started.
Alexi.
Hey guys, I'm Alexi Gorbets, and I'm a group architect at FFW. I'm in Drupal for 9+ years. And on Newell Brands, I started as an architect, and then we kind of shared the role with Lindsay, having our own kind of specialization in different parts, which was kind of cool collaboration.
Thanks, Alexi. Justine?
Hi everyone, I'm Justine Hirsch. I'm a program manager here at FFW. I've been working in Drupal since around Drupal 5, so it's been a little while now. My kind of role within this particular project was really working very closely with the Newell group. You know, we had a lot of sites and a lot of different partnerships. So really part of my role was kind of looking a little bit outside of the day-to-day, working primarily with Steve and other stakeholders just to kind of understand any trends we were seeing, particularly things that we were seeing that may be taking us away from the direction that we wanted to work in.
Thanks, Justine. Steve, our first question's for you. Can you tell us a bit about the Newell team landscape pre-project, and also what the vision for the team was, and why you embarked on the project in a co-development fashion?
Sure. So our internal team at Newell was relatively small. When it started, we had just a front-end and a back-end lead and a couple of developers. But it was really, as I said, a smaller team. So we knew that we'd have to work with an implementation partner to really bring this project to fruition. And I think one of the things that we wanted was a partner that had a lot of expertise in developing, obviously not just on Drupal, but also working with e-commerce. And also we knew that we wanted to really have kind of a cutting edge, best in class approach. So we wanted to use components and, figure out how we could really make ourselves flexible so that as things moved on, we could change if we needed to, and that we could really leverage the best of everything. And so, as I said, we expanded our team working with FFW, and so Alexi's team really had both a presence here in the U.S. and then also offshore in Moldova. And so it was interesting having to kind of coordinate the different
right.
time zones.
And then the ultimate goal was for not only the teams to work together, but also for the FFW team to educate and help the Newell team grow. So you eventually could achieve full independence on the sites, correct?
Correct. I think exactly. So there was the kind of the build phase, but also the transition where, we were really taking over the day-to-day development and deployment of the sites. And as I said, it was great in that the technical leads, with the exception of one, were all on our same time zone. So Alexi, his front-end lead, as well as internal Newell front-end lead and back-end lead, were all here in the U.S., and that really helped with the oversight.
That's great. So Justine, that actually brings me to the second question I would love to ask you. So when we're thinking about resourcing this team, the strategic plan is set, the agreements are signed, everyone's ready to work together. When we're thinking about the team composition on the FFW side, what qualities are you looking for in a team that not only can build, but also, help educate and mentor and empower? What are we thinking of in terms of skill sets? Talk to us about the team.
Sure. So yeah, we really wanted to put together a team that would both obviously be moving forward with the development goals, but really meet some of these other goals that we have, kind of getting that clear architectural vision, getting alignment with the stakeholders, but also, the idea that we want to help the Newell team grow so that they can take this on. So what we really did was, again, kind of look at this as roles and specific key roles. So, Steve has mentioned, a lot of the leads we did actually have in the US. We actually had the advantage of having some of those be West Coast because we were looking at kind of ways where we could help kind of extend our working day as much as possible. We had some aggressive goals that we wanted to achieve, but really looking at it through that layer. So say again, for example, my sort of role was really looking at what could aid us to make the best progress we have and kind of looking for trends for impediments. Alexi was very focused on, again, the architectural vision, making sure that we were tightly aligned, both with Lindsay, but also all of the other teams. We have a lot of integrations and different pieces here. So again, we wanted to make sure that the person in that role was a great communicator, a great collaborator, and obviously, very highly skilled in their architectural area. We also, again, in kind of terms of looking to manage the team, we had a huge offshore presence across both Moldova and Ukraine. And again, really for those, we were looking for, as always, enthusiastic and talented developers, not just in Drupal. We did quite a lot of work in JS, using a lot of the JS frameworks. But for a lot of it, it's also the desire to collaborate. So, whilst the skill sets and the core skills are obviously really important with the team, when we're looking at teams like this, we know that collaboration is key. So we're always looking to ensure that we're building that good collaboration ecosphere across each individual team member as well as the combined teams as a whole.
One thing that was really interesting about the plan too, Justine, was that the leads were actually going to roll not off, but down. Where the teacher then becomes,
right.
the developer. And I thought that was really cool too.
Yeah.
So this next question is for Steve and Alexi. What did your individual teams do to set up for this co-development initiative? So what are the initial steps you two were taking on your independent sides to be able to turn these two teams into one?
Well, I think we had a couple of things in place. I mean, one is that we used an agile process, SAFe, which is scaled agile. And so we made sure that we had a good roadmap in terms of our product backlog, understanding what we were building, and making sure that as we kind of brought team members on, that they were familiar with it, and that we didn't really waste time. We hit the ground running. One of the things we did, which was really helpful, was how we organized the teams. So we tried a couple different structures at first. We tried, okay, do you want to organize front end and back end, and figure out how we want to do that. And at the end of the day, we wound up, again, it's not necessarily agile, but being one big group. But it seemed to be most effective. And as I mentioned before, having the oversight teams all in the same time zone really helped. But also, I think the fact that we had a PM for the offshore team, as well as a PM on site, and then having, as I said, Justine and Newell's own program teams as well, really kind of helping to manage the process. That helped us kind of make a coherent kind of group and be able to tackle it that way.
Alexi, what do you have to add?
Sure. I think what helped was we kind of organized the hierarchy of responsibilities, and we were trying to funnel requests and basically organize the work around like priorities for the project. So there was a great board we could pick from, but there was also a communication gap considering we're working across time zones. So we did have a back-end lead back in Moldova, and me kind of funneling through the requests to him, and also the front-end lead was a separate person. So having support was very important, as looking at the main area of architecture and actually setting up the baseline for a platform. It was very important not to get carried away with the smaller details that could be delegated. So setting up this structure was important. And to be clear, we didn't get it right from the first time. So the idea was that we could work in, Newell had their own sprint cadence, and FFW worked in their own sprint cadence. This was first couple sprints while we learned. And then we quickly realized that even though our teams are big enough to not be combined into one by agile standards, we realized we have one goal, and we had to come together to achieve it, and not try to compete on it, right, in separate sprints, and trying to drag tasks around. Well, we'll take this task because it's simple. So learning from this experience was key, I think.
I think that's right. We were very adaptable in terms of our outlook. We didn't say this is exactly what you're going to do and stay with this for the next 10 sprints. We said no. Let's each sprint. Let's really take in lessons and figure out how we can adjust and optimize, including scaling up and down teams. So if we needed, changing the resource mix, if we said, okay, we need to be more front heavy this sprint, or more back end heavy, or if we needed, let's add additional, 3 more developers because we know we have more of these analytics tickets. Being
well, and it speaks to the layer of foundational communication that everyone said, and the transparency throughout the project, and the engagement between the two teams, and you two teams becoming one, that you were able to make those adjustments throughout, and that they weren't at separate checkpoints and months or sprints or whatever, that you were in real time with each other, responding to the needs of the project to help make it more successful.
I think it also speaks to the level of planning as well, because unless you plan a feature set out a certain number of sprints in advance, you're not going to be able to scale your teams out, because it's adding a team is not something that you can typically do in a few days. And so I think that worked really well for us.
Thanks, Lindsay. My next question was for you, actually. Since you were joining midstream with, the teams have a few sites under their belts, what were your initial impressions coming onto the project? And, what did you see that was really, really helpful? What did you see that maybe needed some improvement?
So I think with joining any new organization or role or team, it's always going to have its challenges, but you're only going to be successful as the information that you have access to onboard, kind of catch up and, get that context. And what I really appreciated about what Newell and FFW had done on this project is just the amount of documentation, both technical and non-technical. So they were really good at using Confluence as a wiki, for requirements documentation and things like UX documentation and specs. So having on the technical side, having useful commit messages and being able to follow code review history was very, very useful with being able to understand the architecture. Alexi was also very good at documenting like significant architecture decisions, and just so you could understand the reasoning, behind some of those key decisions, and kind of get a history of that. And just and really a lot of it is just Jira commenting in general. The entire team, we always made a point to comment every decision or update in a Jira comment, and just being able to look back on old tickets and get that context was just immensely valuable. And I mean, and with I think every project can benefit from improved documentation. And so definitely in the process, we acknowledged that and then, improved the way that we were documenting things. So I think that worked really well and made the project very successful.
Thanks, Lindsay. So let's do a round robin for this one. What were the largest challenges that you each faced in your roles on this brilliant and complex project? Steve, let's start with you.
Sure. I think, any project, I mentioned this the other day, scope creep is always going to be a big concern, especially we had a very aggressive timeline, and that timeline could not be moved at all, as every project starts out. But the key thing was that I think, one of the challenges is governance and making sure that, that the team, both the product team as well as your other stakeholders, all kind of understand what you're building. I think that, we had originally set out to build a minimal viable product, and we said, okay, here's what, our base feature set is. And I think that tends to grow as people start to get in there and kick the tires and say, oh, this is great, look what we can do with this, and can we also change this? So I think being able to really manage that, in a fashion that says, okay, look, we're going to be iterative. We'll get to those features. We'll do a fast follow, but right now let's focus on, hitting the timelines, making sure that we're delivering something that really serves and gives value. So that was, I said, biggest challenge for me.
Thanks, Steve. Justine?
I think one of the biggest challenges that we kind of saw as we continued in the project was kind of our deployments. As we were adding more sites to this, obviously deploying new code came with an impact of more sites. So, obviously some of that we were looking to cover using automated testing, which we did pretty successfully. But really it was just a challenge to kind of make sure that we were all clear on the impact of those, that each thing you roll out, as you grow those sites, you're exponentially increasing the amount of verification you need to do before you deploy, but also your post-deploy verification to, again, make sure that no harm was done to any website during the deployment.
Right. Alexi?
Sure. Well, I think since we're building a platform, and essentially every time you hear the word platform, you think you're going to get all your features on the board. We were kind of building three platforms at the same time, which was an interesting challenge. We were serving three types of clients, which was marketing sites, catalog sites, which would have marketing material, but also a catalog of products sourced from Salesforce Commerce Cloud. And a catalog site could eventually become a DTC, direct-to-consumer site, and sell those products to your users. So having a checkout flow and stuff like that. We had to account for all three use cases in the same platform at the same time and continue supporting three clients, you could say. So the challenge was architecting this in a way that a site could start with as a marketing site, could later get plugged in a catalog feed and become a catalog site, to later become a DTC site. At any point in time, Newell decides to change the business strategy for this particular brand. So if you want to sell directly to consumer, you would be able to do that. So having one platform with all the knobs available as switches to enable, disable, all the configurability we put in place for brands to customize their theme, their layout, any components you would want to use. Search being a universal feature that would work for both with the marketing side and the catalog side. I think this was kind of the biggest challenge. And as to allude to what Steve was mentioning, considering this as a platform, a lot of people are coming with their own requests and can you add this? And you're like, you're a snowflake. You'll have to wait. We have a platform. This was an interesting one.
Understood. Lindsay?
Yeah, going off of what the others said, we're building a platform and not a site. And there's certain things that you need to do to maintain and scale a platform of sites successfully that may not be necessarily what you need to do to launch a single site successfully. And this includes, building out the base platform itself. It could include things like adding automation for releases and automated testing, like Justine mentioned, really leveraging CI/CD, really building out your local development tooling, and just doing things like upgrading core and your contrib modules. Those things are critically important to building out your platform and maintaining it, but they may not add the value of those tasks. May not be immediately obvious to your business stakeholders. And so it can be a challenge at first to really be an advocate to treat these things as critical features and components of your platform. I mean, I think while it may have been more of a struggle at first, we really did, I think, get buy-in for a lot of these tasks. And yeah.
Thanks, Lindsay. That actually segues really well into this next question. So this is for Steve and Justine. When we're thinking about the other teams and the tracks of the project, right? There's multiple tracks, tools, and the other work. What were we leveraging to help support the Drupal initiative?
So as you asked other tools, I mean, one of the things we did was we used a lot of stuff that was already existing. I mean, obviously Drupal 8 was robust enough to support everything we wanted to do. We had the JSON API. We used progressively decoupled, and Lexi can talk more about it in terms of React components as well. We leveraged tools like BLT, which really helped with our builds. We had Travis CI. We also used Acquia Site Factory. Just a lot of, as I said, kind of leveraging what was out there and that worked. But we didn't necessarily, if we needed to build something, we weren't afraid to build it. It's just that we're being kind of smart about it. And if something works out of the box, then we wanted to leverage that. We also, in terms of process, I think we had a lot of good communication. I think one of the keys was really kind of over communicating. In addition to Slack and those kind of tools, we did have a lot of on-site meetings. We also have a lot of daily calls in addition to stand-up. So I think those are all things that we did to make sure all the tracks were aligned.
So Steve, let's stick on that piece because it's interesting to think of the olden days when we were in person together. When we're thinking about those key moments, how did you plan for the in-person? Because the majority of the project was remote and global. So what were we thinking about with the in-person moments?
So again, because Newell follows Safe Agile, we would have product increment sessions where you basically figure out, okay, what are we going to build during this next phase, or what features does this site need? So we'd have big, kind of get-togethers around those where the different tracks would meet and figure out, okay, where are the cross dependencies? Are there any, things that we're going to be waiting on where it's going to prevent us from starting right away? So I think having clear definition of things, definition of ready, definition of done, and making sure that those other teams, whether it's the UX team that's creating, wires and mockups, or if it's, some data that you're waiting on, just making sure all those things are happening in concert. That was really critical.
Justine?
Yeah, I think that, Steve said we had kind of these PI planning sessions where we brought mainly the US team members from FFW, but also we actually had some team members coming over from Ukraine, and they were usually probably around 3 days. And what was nice about that was, again, we had lots of different groups we were collaborating in. So what was a little unusual on this project was our entire QA was completely separate. Again, we had that was something that Newell Group and another vendor were working on. But we had, product owners, we had, in this PI planning, we got everyone together. So what was nice about that was, one, you get to see each other face to face, so we could actually, build relationships within all of those teams, which again is a great way to enhance your collaboration, but also use that as our kicking off point for that next 3 months of work. So the goal of those was really to kind of plan them to get a sense of overall velocity across the teams, but also for us to figure out where are we interdependent and kind of what do those, as much as this is agile, there's absolutely dependencies. So that was a great thing to leverage in person, and then to be able to use that as kind of our guiding star as we went through. And then really what we were looking to do again was kind of really stick with the idea of agile being very transparent, very communicative. So our goals, again, were to try and communicate, if not over-communicate on some of these, and really continue to have an assessment going on of, what might be an impediment, where are there dependencies, and then having those collaborative conversations with those other teams. I think flexibility was definitely kind of needed because, again, we have so many moving parts that building that as an active collaboration meant that, we didn't get into situations where we fought over things. We all had situations where we said, okay, well, this is an issue. How can we collectively mitigate that? And I think that served us really well. And again, we formed really nice, close relationships with all of the different teams that, again, are all working on the same goal, which is the success of the project.
Yeah, and I just want to add, you mentioned it, Justine, but part of it is that, having a partner like FFW, it doesn't necessarily, I think you can work sometimes in a group where there's a strong cultural bias to, we have to do it this way or it has to be done that way. And I think that it was good, the FFW is great at working not just with multi-vendors, but with us as a company in terms of knowing, okay, let's figure out the best solution, not necessarily just one idea or the way we do it. Let's figure out the way that works best for everyone. So that really helped.
Thanks, Steve. So as representatives of the CMS track team, what did being strategic mean to you on the project? Lindsay?
So again, like when you're working with multiple sites on a platform, some sites are going to have higher traffic. They may have more vocal stakeholders. You're going to get feature requests, and I mean, you really have to find a balance between when you say no, like that's a snowflake request that should not be in the platform. That's not something that could be, beneficial or effectively leveraged by other sites. I mean, you have to decide when you negotiate that scope or like abstract that feature maybe to where it can be, leveraged by, multiple sites or all sites on the platform, or, agreeing to add that feature to the platform so it can be leveraged by all sites. And so I think you have to be really strategic, we were really strategic about setting those boundaries. And it's critical to the successful platform like this.
Thanks, Lindsay. Justine, I see you nodding away, so please build on that.
And I think a part of that as well, again, was kind of being able to be strategic in a way where we could look, again, at where are we going? What are those high-level goals? What is the purpose of the project we're doing? Because, again, we have many, many features. We have many, many stakeholders. It's really easy to just get caught in the weeds of, the ticket-by-ticket basis. So really, from my perspective, being strategic was, again, kind of zooming out from that, looking at the overall goals and figuring out, is there anything that's getting in our way? Is there anything that we're doing that maybe we might want to try and do a little bit differently because it doesn't seem to be building on success? It seems to be possibly, detracting a little bit. So from my perspective, that was kind of the big, from my role, that was what I needed to do in order to kind of, again, help us to be very strategic and ensure that we're not missing the finish line because we're so deep in the features.
Right. Steve?
Yeah, so I think both of what Lindsay and Justine said, resonate. I think the other thing is we really try to call out risk early. So, if there's something that we think, hey, this is going to impact velocity or it's going to, impact delivery, we really want to, have it bubble up right away, because those are the kind of things that I think it's important, especially in large organizations when you have a lot of different pieces that are moving, to be able to say, hey, I just want to make sure everyone's aware of this, put it on the radar. So that was one thing. The other piece was that I think from a architecture standpoint, and Alexa can, talk about this, and Lindsay as well, but we really also built things in a way that didn't collect technical debt. We kind of said, you know what, we're building a platform, we're not building one-off sites, and if it takes a little bit longer to do it, let's do it the right way. And I think that really paid dividends down the road, so that strategically we didn't have to rip apart and do open heart surgery when we ever need to make a change, or at the 11th hour someone said, hey, can you also do this? So I think that was something strategically that was
Thanks,
helpful.
Steve. Alexa, do you want to expand on that?
Sure. So to expand a little bit on that, one example would be we started with a search being just a search functionality in Drupal. And then at some point we realized that our search engine might change because we have Salesforce coming with products, and we have Drupal coming with content. So one of our strategies we employed, like, can we build a UI for search that works for both at the same time, and you just plug in your backend, and we did that, which was kind of cool. So yeah, where we could, we leveraged the front end in a way that we could plug in an adapter basically to different systems, and we kind of looked forward, what would that be if the experience would be completely different for Drupal and the Salesforce content? If that would be completely different, we immediately saw there was a lot of ADA requirements on this project. So you do a lot of fixes for ADA. You have kind of everything polished, and then you bring another front end that you have to fix again. We were trying not to do that. So that was kind of the strategy on where we tried to go technically. There was another strategy we employed for fighting over what goes on the CMS team's board and what doesn't belong on our board. So since there's multiple teams in parallel trying to achieve the same goal, but there's still a good amount of dependencies between teams, CMS team was at the end of the spectrum. We were the last station on the train, and the problem was that all the dependencies piled up to us. So we would immediately be like, you didn't do this. Whatever we could vote, we kind of started being very aggressive. Hey, so you guys could build us a proxy. Please do that. You guys want to do some very sophisticated authentication. We don't want to deal with all your keys. We want like something like simple JSON API. Give us one key to use, and like you want to do compliance. Please do this on the proxy side. So kind of trying to manage between different teams strategically how we would get less work was one of our strategies.
Right. Well, and again, just to make sure we were spreading those dependencies, because again, were we happy to do the work? Yes, but our issue was usually being the last point before. Okay, is it done at launch? We needed to ensure we were spreading that throughout.
Sure.
Yeah, and I think to what you said, Alexei, about being the last station on the train, I think CMS being the glass, no matter where the issue originates, it could be bad data, 20 systems away. Ultimately, it winds up first on our doorstep. Someone says, "Hey, this is what I'm seeing on the website," so that's typically what happens.
So accessibility was briefly mentioned, and Newell has a strong dedication to the digital equity for all, which is really wonderful. Justine and Steve, can you talk a little bit about that before we keep moving?
Sure. So absolutely, Newell is committed to accessibility. Our sites are currently AA compliant, and we have both an in-house team that works on accessibility, and we also work with other companies and tools to try to really make sure that we remediate any accessibility and user experience issues. So I think that's great. And Justin can talk a little more about the challenges of doing that and working with a big development team. I'll kick it over.
I mean, it was not without challenge. I mean, we really appreciated it because, again, having that commitment at the get-go and baking this in is, I think, as anyone who's ever done an ADA remediation project knows, you'd rather build it into the beginning. The way that we actually managed a lot of it was to establish kind of a commonly agreed checklist of things that had to happen for everything that we're developing where ADA was an issue. And then also identifying areas where there may be options or there may be specifics around that aren't covered by kind of the checklist. And that was kind of a nice way to ensure that we were implementing that, in the same way across all of that, but also then kind of calling out specific features where we needed to dig deeper. And there was actually an ADA lead on the Newell Group side, which again was really useful. That really made things a lot easier and smoothed a lot of those conversations.
And to add to that, I think just a fun fact, the most common cause of reopens of tickets was accessibility. And not because accessibility wasn't built in, but because accessibility was a requirement. And also it's a very opinionated space, so there were some discussions after the reopens, obviously. But the fact that you cannot pass the ticket, the front-end ticket, further until accessibility is solved made this a requirement and not a feature you add later.
Yeah, I agree also that, because a lot of this stuff are guidelines. There are best practices, but they change daily for accessibility, that it does make it somewhat debatable. Even if you have a requirement set in stone, when you go to test it, a lot of it can't be automated in terms of the testing. So someone may have a thought, and you know what, it might be better if we do it this way. So I agree. There were a lot of real consensus.
Thank you. So Steve and Lindsay, what benefits does Newell Brands derive from the digital experience that was created?
By investing a lot of effort in building out the core platform and things like automation and, having very rigorous processes, we got to a point where we could, launch multiple sites over a matter of weeks with a very high degree of confidence in that go live. And it may have taken a bit of time, to build out that core platform. And, that can be a difficult thing, to kind of explain to your business stakeholders why they, can't see a site live yet. But I think they, the benefits speak for themselves when they can see, that build out of many sites, in such a short amount of time.
Yeah, I agree completely with that. The speed to market factor. I mean, at one point we delivered 5 production sites in 4 weeks, and with a lot of rich content. And I think that's definitely proof that the project was successful. I think the other thing is that, as Alexi mentioned before, we have different tiers, different types of sites, catalog marketing, and those sites could be switched. One thing that wasn't mentioned is that you didn't need to do a new deployment in order to do that. If you wanted to switch a site to catalog, as long as you had data for it, you could do that. So I think that kind of flexibility and the ability to add features very quickly, not just to one site, but to all the sites. If we built a new feature, every site could turn that on if they wanted to. So that's really, I think, the great benefit.
That's amazing. So teams, lessons learned from this project that you use on your current project work. Alexi, I'm going to start with you.
Oh my. Well, I think this has been one of the biggest and interesting decoupled or progressively decoupled rather experiences I've worked on, and I still refer to that day to kind of things we did on the Newell project to pick them and use on different projects, because we kind of thought of the best practices of progressively decoupled, and the things we used were kind of very nice. For example, all of our components that you could progressively embed had their own blocks, and you could put them anywhere you want. You can add a paragraph or in between, or even somewhere in your header and stuff like that. But what they actually did, they basically rendered an empty div, which lazily there was a React component loaded into it using React portals, if we go a little technical. And that tactic of doing everything lazily meant that you're not loading your entire JavaScript library when you need one small component on the page. You're rather, if you have one component, it's lazily loaded and it's embedded, and only what this component requires gets added to the page. So that's known as code splitting. In general, having a Drupal and having to manage a React code base was an interesting challenge here, and I think to this day I'm using this as a kind of a baseline.
Awesome, thank you. Lindsay?
Yeah, I mean, lessons learned. So in doing demos and launching sites, what we really emphasize is really typically only the end user site experience. However, as others have mentioned, we invested a ton of effort in developing a really elegant backend interface, with media management and integration with our DAM, with configurable site preferences and very elegant theme customization. And I think some of the value of those features may not have been as immediately obvious to business stakeholders as it should have been. So, and moving forward, I make more of a point to be, I guess, a more platform feature evangelist for that sort of stuff to more, effectively communicate that message. And it's important to a successful project like this.
Thanks, Lindsay. Justine?
I'm going to keep it short because I know we want to have some time for questions. I think for me, it just kind of reinforced and continues me to ensure that everything we do is a collaboration, and that working together and being adaptable and maybe looking at different options will always serve a project. So it's something I felt that I knew already, but I think that this project particularly kind of really showed what we can achieve when we have that adaptability.
Absolutely. Steve?
Yep, a couple of things. I mean, everyone kind of had the right idea, but I would also say, evangelizing is kind of what Lindsay was alluding to, was making sure that your end users of your product really understand the product. I think that's something where we were so focused on, getting it done in time, building with quality, that I think, it kind of, there wasn't a team that was responsible for saying, hey, by the way, you can do these 20 things. Did you know that? So I think that, we built a Cadillac, but maybe most users only knew how to, open the glove compartment. So I think that's something that maybe they learn as they start to get in there and kick the tires. But I think it's really important to make sure that you are training the people that are going to be using the system and that they understand all the capability and flexibility it offers. That to me was an important lesson learned. The other one I was just saying briefly is just that I think it takes a lot of courage and dedication to build a solution. I think there are a lot of products and a lot of vendors out there who say just buy this off the shelf, just buy this off the shelf. But I think that one of the things that really was tremendous, and it's a good lesson learned, is that we gave ourselves a lot of flexibility and future-proofed the platform in terms of how we built this, and by building, as opposed to just making something cookie cutter and running with the rest of the pack. It really helped Newell differentiate experiences.
Thank you so much. Team, you've been wonderful. You've shared so many wonderful insights. Kayla, before we flip to you for some questions, we would just like to say thank you to the entire Newell FFW team for all of the hard work and effort and thought that they put into this marvelous platform. So thanks, team. Kayla, why don't you set us up with some questions?
All right, so we might only have time for one audience question, so I'm going to go with Gerardo, who asked first. He said, how do you all document architecture?
Right, I can take this one. So we used the architecture review board framework. So the idea was that we were not one team, not just the CMS. There was a lot of dependencies. There was the e-commerce team, and there was the API team, and there was a lot of the SAP and like all how the products flow into the system. We were again last station of the train, but the documentation of the architecture and all the decisions had to be global on the company level. So we were using a framework called Architecture Review Board. I think that's the name. And the idea was that we met weekly with all the leads of different teams, and we documented possible architectural solutions with options, option 1, option 2, option 3, benefits, downsides, benefits, downsides, benefits, downsides. And we discussed them in the larger group with business involved and communicated clearly what are those downsides, if they can be mitigated, and what is the best path going forward. From there, we went with a consensus, which we picked one of the 3 options, and this went into implementation. And this was kind of a weekly cadence, and I think it worked pretty successfully. A smaller team would not need that, but a big team like that was absolutely critical.
Thanks, Alexi.
And so that was just to add to that. So all of that was documented in Confluence, so that anyone from Newell and on the FFW team would have access to all that information.
Thanks. Kayla, can we squeeze in one more?
Let's see. Carson Black said, have there been any snowflakes that had to be completely rejected or ejected from your Site Factory platform, or has JSON API and custom theming been enough for your needs? Then he said, sounds like progressive decoupling with React was a solution to my previous question. Does that sound correct?
I can add that. So there were snowflakes. So we had to find them back. I think they mostly were around a brand wants to have it in a certain way. A brand wants to have a size selector on the cart, and we are communicating back to the brand, guys, not all brands have a size. You have to make it a flexible attribute, like you could configure it in any sort of way. And they're like, no, we want size to be here. And you're like, no, we're a platform. So those kind of things. You can overcome all of those issues. And obviously, we could build snowflakes. We did not want to.
Steve, anything to add there to close us out?
Yeah, no, I think, as I said, one last thing I would just say is that we were very blessed in that we had really a great team, and still do, as I said. We had Alexi and Lindsay and Justine and yourself. But I think that we were fortunate that we had a lot of people who had a lot of experience, but also we were able to kind of leverage, everyone's strengths, and really, whether it's, had to deal with caching or architecture, or, program management or anything else. I think we really we're very focused, and I think that's obviously some of it is having the luck of having the right people at the right time, but also it's, as I said, everyone had a lot of great skills and experience.
Thanks so much. Thanks for coming to our session. We appreciate it, and we'll see you soon.